Well, good morning, folks. Welcome back to the Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Merle. Today, I want to take a probably I would say even very sober look at transplant, not through my own eyes, but through the lives of one of our fellow transplant recipients. By now, most of you have probably seen the article, the New York Times article that was circulating all over social media, particularly Facebook, particularly in many of our transplant Facebook groups the other day, written by Amy Silverstein. The title of the article is this: "My transplanted heart and I will die soon." You can immediately know that with a title like that, that's something that you and I, as transplant recipients, we're probably immediately going to be drawn to it and going to want to read it. But I'll be totally honest with you. When I opened that link that day, and like most of us, I don't subscribe to the New York Times, so I had to go through and put in my email. I had to go through some work to get to it. But when I got through that, I knew right then that little bit of frustration to get to it was well worth it. The first few lines of her article says this: "Today I will explain to my healthy transplanted heart why in what may be a matter of days or weeks at best, we will die." And when I read that line, I knew immediately I had to read the article. Now, I'm not going to share much out of the article with you, but I do want to begin by, first of all, praising Amy Silverstein for being willing to publish this article. Now, she is a two-time author of two other books you can go ahead and find probably on Amazon or anywhere. But one book called Sick Girl, which I understand is a tremendously good book for any of us that have lived with transplant or any type of chronic illness, or for a family member who's done the same. And also another book she wrote entitled "My Glory Was That I Had Such Friends." And I haven't really looked into that book much yet, but I can assume by the title, we could all say if it had not been for our friends and our loved ones, we would no way be able to make it through any of this that we have endured, most likely. But basically, the gist of this article, again, the title of it, "My Transplanted Heart and I Will Die," hits to me right at the core of things. And having been a transplant educator now for basically the last 10 years, I have come to know and to realize that transplant is certainly, it's a treatment and not a cure. And that's more or less what her article gets down to. Now, she went through her first transplant, or was blessed with her first transplant, back many years ago. As a matter of fact, I think according to the article, I've got to glance back here so I don't miss it. 35 years ago, living with organ transplant. 2 different donor hearts being received. The first one when she was 25 years old. And she tells the story about how she received a heart from a extremely athletic, wonderful young lady at the time, a teenager, as a matter of fact, and how that she knew from day one that she absolutely wanted to care for that gift, and she wanted to show her appreciation for that gift, and she wanted to be sure that her and her donor heart would live a extremely long life and to maximize life and to get the most out of it. And she basically explains on through the article as well many touching details, but also many reality checks where she says, you know what, I did everything right. I did absolutely everything right. I took my meds on time, every time in the right way. I ate correctly. She used one example. She said, I would never use more than 1 pat of butter. I never drank alcohol. I never did any of those things that would have put my donor's heart and my body at risk. And she basically says she did it all right. All the appointments, all the tests, all the trials, all the difficult things that we endure, that not because we like it, but because we have to, or we choose to, again, honor that donor, she endured. She talks about the side effects of the medications and the damage that's left behind by those, and how that some of those side effects are immediately, they happen in the moment, and others are more long-term. I understand that. And I know you do as well. particularly if you are a post-transplant patient with any months, or you might call it years, under your belt. I know you understand that. I know what transplant's about. And I know that unlike what probably the majority of the world understands, if someone who's never been around transplant, I've heard it too many times, they basically believe transplant is a process where, you need an organ, you go to your doctor, you discuss the fact that you need one, whether that's heart, lung, liver, kidney, pancreas, or whatever, and they tell you that you'd be a good candidate. They put you on a list. They go out and find you a donor. You get that donated organ, and then, a matter of days, weeks maybe at the most, later you walk out of the hospital and you go back to life, and you go back to a better life. And things are always, as we say in the South, they assume hunky-dory. They're perfect. Folks, transplant life is very, 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 very rarely that way. And I would probably go as far as to say that even if one believes that their life post-transplant has been perfect, I'm thrilled that they've been that blessed, and I'm happy. I'm excited for that. But I don't want that person, if that's you, I don't want you to be blind to the fact that things may take a turn. And this is not intended to be negative. As a matter of fact, her article, a lot of what she talks about is how, every time that she comes out with an article like this, or her book, particularly Sick Girl, that she gets people, believe it or not, who come at her and say, you should just be thankful for the gift you received. You should just be happy that you got an organ donation. You should not complain. You shouldn't, fuss about this or that. And, the medications, yeah, they're hard, but they're worth it. And hey, I understand all that. I completely understand all that. And working as I have, as a transplant educator and doing these over 1,000 videos, I certainly know that because I get those comments. I get told that type of stuff. But the majority of the world has a misconception. They treat this like any other surgery or procedure. If you have trouble with your gallbladder, if eventually the doctor decides to take out your gallbladder, guess what will never be a problem to you again? Your gallbladder. I had my appendix out when I was in the 5th grade. I've never had trouble with my appendix ever since. You know why? It's not there. And many surgeries, procedures work that way. They just do. Transplant is not the same as that. It is so much more that it involves a lifetime, lifelong commitment to doing everything right. But as Amy shares with us, even at that, it's not forever. I mean, now, the death rate is 1 to 1, okay? Right now, currently, the death rate of human beings is 1 to 1. I understand that. But the things that we face in our futures, are sometimes troubling. And I'm not a pessimist. I mean, part of the idea for doing this channel is that I advocate, educate, and what's the last one? Motivate people. And I want to tell you, if you're facing transplant, or if you're short of their out, or whatever, if you're like her, you're nearly 35 years. Hey, this is a wonderful thing. There's no doubt about it. But it is not without its challenges. Now, again, I said I wouldn't read much of this article. I would encourage you. I'm going to have it linked below. I want you to go and read her article, pick up her book, Sick Girl, what have you. Basically, what it comes down to is she received a transplant, lived a number of years, finally was overtaken by, I just lost my word, but the hardening of that heart muscle. It's a long technical term, vasculoscopy. I've done videos on it, but she was taken by that, had to be retransplanted. Blessed that she got that opportunity, and now that she has cancer, it's just a sad, unfortunate. I don't think unfortunate's the wrong word. It's just a sad end of the road. And as a matter of fact, I reached out to Amy the other day, and I just asked. I didn't know. I saw the article, and I said, "Hey, I would love to interview you and let share some of your story. it would help so many people. And she said, that sounds awesome, except for I'm just not doing any interviews. Her days are numbered the way she understands it, and she just, she's just not going to do that. I appreciate that. I respect that. It's just a tough thing. But the article goes on and says so many things. Let me tell you about one of the things she says here. She says, my first donor heart died of, listen to this, died of transplant medications. Inadequate protection of the donor heart from rejection, and my second will die likely by a stymied immune system that is given free rein to cancer. Again, that's reality. That's reality. We're so blessed. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'll be 10 years post-transplant. That's nothing compared to this, but I'll be 10 years post-transplant next month. Matter of fact, in a month and 2 days. And I'm thankful for every breath I've taken since. But I know that in some senses, the same medications that keep me alive, that ward off or hold off rejection, they can only do so much. And I know that at some point, even though I'm 10 years out, I've never experienced rejection. There are no signs of the hardening of the arteries. I get that I seem to be right now well above the curve. And I'm thankful for that. I'm so thankful for that. But I also know that that isn't likely to always be the case. I also know, and it's really what Amy wants to get across here, it seems to me, other than just sharing that this is not easy, which, again, Amy, I love you for that. You did an outstanding job in communicating. But she wants to get across the facts that medical technology, that we're thankful advances at a rapid pace in some cases. In other cases, like in the world of transplant, has just not advanced that much. Now, I've talked with people who are 20, 30 years out, and they will tell me, okay, things are better now than they were then. Yeah, they're better. They're better. But in a day when we are at such a race to, cure cancers and to, fight diabetes, and I don't think we do near enough for either, just within a couple of years ago, came up with miracle drugs of COVID vaccines and such. And you can argue about that. I'm not arguing whether they are or not, but, rapidly produced and rapidly jumped on a problem and took, tried to take care of it. Transplant really overall has not changed very much at all since its inception. Life expectancies are better. Yes, they are. They are. Medications have improved. They sure have. But on one hand, we're on medications. Most all of us are on medications that have been available for 40 years or more, with really no options. You're on microfenolic acid and you have a problem, well, you'll try Myfortic. If you're on tacrolimus, you have a problem, you'll try Ceremis. Okay, what do we do if neither one of those are working? No, not much. You have a bout of rejection. What do we do about that? Well, first step, we up your immunocompromising drugs and pop your steroids up and hope for the best. Second step, there are a few other options, IV treatments and such, but really in reality there have not been a lot of changes. And so what she advocates for in this article is that changes need to get moving. I'll read a part of a paragraph. She says, transplantation is no different from a lifelong illness that needs newer, safer, more effective medications, improvements in drug regimens that are needed for lupus and Parkinson's and a host of others. But the key difference is that only in transplantation are patients expected that the disease is in a state as a miracle, and only in transplant is there pressure to accept what you have and not dare to express a wish, let alone a demand for a healthy, longer life. And I understand that 1,000%. I mean, really, you know, you get an extra year, that's lovely, but I like 10 years. I'm about to accomplish 10 years. I want 20. Wouldn't anybody? She's even sat across, and I've been in these same rooms, Amy. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've got a very close relationship with my transplant doctors and surgeons and heart failure teams and disease control, you name it. Everybody that's ever been involved in my life, I'm really close with them. Some of us are on, text and phone call, personal cell phone basis. I've sat in those rooms as someone kind of preparing myself for being a transplant educator, and I've taught with them on personal, behind closed door levels, and like you did with your doctors, they're all agreeing that things are just not advanced enough. We've got to go further. We've not only got to advocate for organ donation awareness, surely that's the first step, but we also got to advocate for better care, better matching. I was talking with someone the other night after I read this article. They had mutually read this article, Amy, and for those of you that read, I'll say it to you now. Her downfalls have been that the immunocompromising drugs ultimately damaged her body, damaged her organ. I've got a lot of good friends that have had heart transplants that now, so many years post, they need liver transplants or kidney transplants. I mean, I'm one. I've got cirrhosis of the liver now, mild to moderate, they call it, but the medicines are to blame. But who ultimately are meeting a demise because of what those medications are doing to their body. Yes, we have to have them. Yes, we can't, just quit and stop and give up. But man, we've got to have advancing technology. But I've been in the rooms with those doctors that admit that is not happening fast enough, not with the advancements we have available, not with the information we have available. The reason transplant was not effective in the beginning is there was a small pool of transplant recipients to learn from. Okay, I get that. When you're the first 100 transplants in the United States, they don't have a lot to base their care on. They don't have a lot to base their way of dealing with things. They don't have that. But folks, we crossed over 1 million transplants. Was it in 2020 or 2021, something like that? We've crossed 1 million transplants. My transplant center's done thousands of transplants, and they're wonderful, but they could be better. So we've not only got to raise awareness for organ donation, we've got to raise awareness for advancing technologies. And I love the things that have been made available, the heart in a box. That's all wonderful. That's all great. That is allowed more people to be transplanted. I mean, my heart came from Oklahoma, which I live in Alabama. It's a long way, but it worked. It was a stressful night and day, but it made it and it worked. The heart in a box would have eased that, would have made that organ more viable for a longer period of time. That same organ might be transferred from California all the way to New York or something. I don't know how that works, but things have improved, and that's great. But that doesn't do any good if after transplant, the treatments or the maintenance for that organ are not good enough, or they've not improved enough, or I don't feel Amy doesn't, and so many of us have chimed in and commented beneath this article. You're right, it's not there. We're not there yet. We're a long way from there. And it is high time progress be made. I want to say she mentioned something in the article. If she didn't, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to scan it. I've got it here on my iPad below me here, but I want to say she mentioned something. Maybe she didn't, but a little fact, a little known fact, if that makes sense, is that transplant centers measure their success rates in 1, 3, and 5 year increments. Okay. So the main goal being 1 year. Transplant centers are rewarded and they're made popular, if you will. Certain centers around the country are rewarded for getting patients to 1 year post-transplant. Now, that's not an easy task. Don't get me wrong. That is not an easy task, okay? But at the very same time, when I was listed for transplant, I matter of fact, I put off transplant for many years, hoping that the outcomes would get better. But I tell you what, when I had two small children, my children were very young. Well, one of them was very young. The other one was fifth grade, third, fourth, fifth grade during the process, fifth grade ultimately when I was transplanted. But if they would have told me, we promise you, we'll give you 1 year, a 1 year guarantee on this heart, I would have refused it and moved on with my life. If they would have told me the secret that, 3 years, 5 years is their goal, I would have been offended by it. I know that now. And I know the average lifespan of a single heart transplant, the average lifespan is still a little over 10 years. I understand that. And I know people that live nearly 40, but I also know a lot of people that make it out of that first 3 or 4 years. I know a lady right now who was very similar to my story. She dealt with no rejection whatsoever until she was 13 years post, but then it started. We've got to improve. A lot of what Amy says here, it's really just heartbreaking, and it's really reality. Matter of fact, the first person that sent me this article, I hadn't been on Facebook the day it came out, which was the 21st of April, just a few days ago. No, today's 21st. When did it come out? The 18th, so just a few days ago. The first person that sent me this article, I hadn't seen it then. She said, basically, can you read this article and please tell me it ain't so? Tell me she's wrong. And I had to reply back and say, no, she's right. From being in those backdoor secret meetings, and she is right. From me dealing with thousands and thousands of patients around the world, really, and having a lot of one-on-one conversations with them, she is right. Does that make me any less appreciative? No. Does that make any of those people? No. We want the best for everyone. I do. But I do know this. I've learned this the hard way, if you will. We do better when we face things, as the song used to say, eyes wide open. When we know what's ahead, when we see what could be at least ahead. And it's sad. Now, she kind of ends the article here by talking more about her sitting down and kind of having a talk with her donor heart. And, just they have conversations. Man, it's sad. I'm sorry. I've done all I can do. I don't know what else to do. And sobbing over that. But she also ends it by saying, she said, I want to speak for my transplant cardiologist, the finest physician I've ever known, who sat across from me last month and cried and let me cry into his palms when he told me I had incurable cancer. She says, I sat quietly for a moment before replying, I sacrificed my whole body for this beautiful heart. She said, I said, but there is a victory here too. I kept her perfect to the end. You're right, Amy. You are absolutely right. And I know I'm trying to do so. All of you are trying to do so. And we're not trying to rain on your joy, on your gratitude, your whatever. But folks, Amy has done us a service by writing and allowing this article to be published in the New York Times. And I would encourage you, if you haven't read it, I'll link it. You go read it, and then I want you to share it over and over and over, and tell your constituents on social media, whatever, Please read this. Please understand this is my life. Please understand this is how I'm asked to live. And please understand we need help making things better. We have to have that. We've got to have help. Then after you do that, advocate for yourself as an individual as well. And if you choose to do so, hit your knees and pray for Amy and for the peace that she has so far, and pray for her as she goes forward in the days ahead. And pray for her family and everybody. It's a heartbreaking story, but it's exactly the type of story that the world needs to hear. Stay stronger, my friends.